But first, if you believe today's comprehensive seat-by-seat poll in The Australian, one of Labor's most underwhelming leaders ever is headed for the Lodge, flanked by ministerial retreads from the failed Rudd and Gillard eras. Promising little in the way of policy reform beyond greater deficits, higher welfare spending, a faster trajectory to net zero, and this week increased wages which aren't even in the remit of any Prime Minister to deliver. A weak leader leaving an even weaker frontbench, seemingly coasting their way to victory despite all his stuff-ups. Is this really what Australians want in just a week's time? It is. I reckon that's where they're headed, but the coalition can't say it wasn't warned. This is happening in part because it's a government chasing a fourth term, and that's never been easy at a national level, particularly as even good governments get more shop-soiled the longer they last. And partly, Labor looks like it will win because this government took the wrong lessons from the last election. Last time, despite losing the plum seat of Warringah to the original Teal independent, the government got its miracle win by campaigning strongly in the regions and the outer suburban seats against Labor's job-destroying, industry-wrecking emissions reduction target. The right lesson to draw was that the coalition wins when it makes climate change an economic issue, but loses when it concedes the Green left's point that there's somehow a moral imperative to reduce emissions, even if the biggest emitters are doing nothing and burning the fossil fuels that we export but refuse to use here at home. But instead of arguing the common sense position that won them the election last time and the one before that, and certainly the landslide in 2013, this term, the Liberals have been bullied by Britain's Boris Johnson, a climate-obsessed media, and the so-called modern Liberal MPs into adopting net zero emissions, enabling then Anthony Albanese to claim that the climate wars are over, essentially because the coalition has conceded this ground to Labor. This, despite the fact that now Boris Johnson has called for a climate change pass as Britain and Europe scramble to ramp up coal, gas and nuclear energy to reduce their renewables-driven dependence on Russian energy. And it's not like all the coalition's climate concessions have neutralised the Teals either. The left has got everything they wanted on emissions reductions, yet now they want more because climate change has never been about the climate. It's about wealth redistribution and de-industrialising the West. And making more money, of course, for investors in subsidised renewables, men like the Teals' number one ticket holder, Simon Holmes à Court. If today's poll is right, and it's an if, it's experimental polling, the Teals will claim 2 seats in Victoria, and with a bit of tactical voting by Labor supporters, could even pick up a couple of seats in New South Wales. Meanwhile, as well as losing inner city seats to the Teals, that's the 6% of the other vote in this week's news poll, the coalition is in danger of losing outer metropolitan and regional seats to Labor due to the preference leakage from the 9% that Newspoll says are voting for One Nation and the Palmer Party. On these polls, conceding on climate issues doesn't stop the leakage of progressive votes to the Green left, yet it certainly drives the leakage of conservative votes to splinter parties on the right. And those splinter votes on the right do not have disciplined preferences, so the vote you lose never reliably comes back. So here's my question to the modern Liberals. Why move to the left to appease the Teal types whose objective isn't the Liberal Party's salvation, but its destruction? Just look at Malcolm Turnbull's antics to see their real game. If the government does indeed lose, the coalition will have to think long and hard about what it stands for and who it represents. If Josh Frydenberg holds his seat despite today's poll and becomes opposition leader, the danger is that the coalition becomes more Labor-light in order to hold the Treasurer's seat of Kooyong. If Kooyong does fall to the Teals, and let's hope it doesn't because Frydenberg's a talent, there's still a danger that a party whose cultural heartland has long been in Sydney and Melbourne's well-heeled eastern suburbs could opt to be even more progressive and less conservative. Now, this would be a recipe for permanent opposition, with the overall centre-right split between the coalition and a plethora of conservative breakaways. Hanson, Palmer, Lib Dems, you know the drill, while the whole polity in our country drifts further to the left. Increasingly, Labor's becoming the party of those who don't have to worry about earning a living because they're either wealthy or because they're living off the taxpayer. To succeed, the Liberals need to be the party of real workers, the party of Menzies' forgotten people. It's about time some Liberals running for office remembered exactly who these forgotten people are. Not the rich and the powerful, said Menzies, because they can look after themselves. Not those at the other end either, as their wages and conditions are protected by law. Instead, Menzies argued in support of the simple salary earners, the shopkeepers, he said, skilled artisans, professional men and women, farmers, and so on. These are, in the political and economic sense, he said, the middle class. Menzies went on, they are, for the most part, unorganised and unself-conscious. They are envied by those whose benefits are largely obtained by taxing them. They are not rich enough to have individual power. They are taken for granted by each political party in turn. They are, said Robert Menzies, as he founded the Liberal Party of Australia, the backbone of the nation. Well, as the Morrison government prepares for its official campaign launch in Brisbane on Sunday, let's hope those words of Menzies are front and centre, top of mind. Even now, it's not too late for the PM to remember the quiet Australians who gave him his miracle win last time, because a political party that doesn't stand for anything ends up standing for nothing. Otherwise, if he doesn't, Australia will get the weakest government in recent history at a time when we need strength and competence more than ever.